She's nothing like her. She's nothing at all like Carmen. Do you realize this? The ones who were with us at the beginning are nowhere to be found among the people who remain here now. They are all gone. Because of the monitoring of the eye, we couldn't even give a proper burial to Callie and Daniel. This place here is all we have left. Are you nervous right now? I wish to be your shadow, forever behind you, even if I am not good enough. May we be together and fade away together. The weak and fragile chick that has just pecked at life out of an egg cannot hope to stand against this world. I deemed you to be that chick, one that is too fragile to endure all of this. I have never known where it was that you wanted to fly to since you never told me. I was always nothing more than your student who needed your teachings. You were always so frugal with words. I could have no idea what you exactly attempted to achieve by creating this prison. The process of creation was too harsh. I could not help but run away. I could have run far enough that I would never see you again, but I did not. I tried to set everything right, and I was caught. Since then, the iron hands that govern me have stopped permanently. In fact, I vaguely knew that the end was nearing. However, I was simply too afraid to face the final outcome, and instead chose to stay here forever and ever. I may have been verbose with my reasons for attempting to stop you, but to be truthful, I did not want to part with you yet again. That was my biggest motivation. Nevertheless, I should support your decision. I have always blindly followed behind you and stayed by your side. Remember? May we embrace glory together, for back then we could not. Grant the proper end to those locked up here, and to yourself. We've achieved 90% termination of the Seed of Light, and with the final Sephiroth suppressed, and we can now build the future with this progress, and also embrace the past. I am really trying to work that in, aren't I? So you wish to hear an answer from me. I have already made my conclusion. I was full of myself at first. I thought you would never be able to do anything without me by your side when we first met. It turns out you are much more independent than I thought. Perhaps my assistance was not necessary in your journey, after all. Therefore, you should not be seeking out an answer from me anymore. Now you can clearly see the door, it appears. So what do you think will be waiting for you behind that door? A long time has passed since my loved ones left with their broken bodies and hearts. We finally met after taking such a long detour. I sent you a letter one day. That old, strange letter that had the same name for sender and recipient. It told you that we would meet soon. Why do you hesitate? Please come with your mind at ease. I hope this environment satisfies you. I tried my best to recreate our office. You need at least one place in life to feel comfortable, don't you? However, I speculate you feel that this place is a bit more serene than you might remember, so to say. There are many reasons for that. This is a reflection of your heart, after all. The emptiness in your mind must be what makes this place so void. We weren't particularly fond of untidiness, but there she was, always making a mess out of an organized room. There were times when we were used to such messiness, giving up on cleaning the room. Sadly, our hearts couldn't bear to recreate such a moment. I am sure that now you know. This space changes to the rhythm of your heart. This office is born from your heart, siphoned up from your deepest subconsciousness. Yes, many parts of this facility were extracted and created from our minds. How did you think building such enormous underground structures in such a short period of time was possible? We needed multiple extractions until we finally solidified amorphous images into something tangible. We repeated it so many times, until the memories were blurred and the emotions were dulled, to a point where even the original sin was forgotten. Yes, there truly were countless repeats. It must have been roughly 10 years outside, while this entire facility has been trapped in the cycle for a length of 10,000 years. This eternity is fascinating. All humans are given only one life to live. The future comes to us like the relentless waves of the sea. We cannot go against them, we are merely pushed back. Time Track's technology could only reverse time in a very limited area. This tech was used for trivial things, such as granting an infinite moment of death to a condemned man, or to show those whose days are numbered their happiest moments. However, when combined with our energy tech, this small technology could bloom into something bigger. We invested in them without hesitation, even though they required a massive amount of funding and energy. That's how Time Track's second invention came to life. If time could be reversed infinitely, we could reach the sky that seems unreasonable. Time Track is T-Corp, the people who have been letting us fast forward time as we please and rewind back to the memory repository. It's just a little explanation of what their technology is and why we have access to it. Unfortunately, breaking an absolute law of nature cost us a lot. Although we could rewind time infinitely, it always left some form of distortion, perhaps because this technology still has not been perfected. No man could keep their sanity intact in this place. But here you are. You've reached this point, even though you limped and groveled along the way. Of course, it wouldn't have been possible if not for Angela, but it is a Herculean achievement that you went through that journey. Please, let your body and mind rest, if just for a brief moment. You must be exhausted. The path after this will be brutal. Extremely brutal. Us, we who you meet again will also be brutal. They will not let you pass as simply as I do. If by any chance you think you're not ready yet, it is okay to go back to the first act. If you've made it here once after such a long and hard time, you will surely come here again, no matter how long it takes. We literally have all the time in the world. There is no need to hurry. Just keep in mind that the situation will be much different if you move forward from here. You will be given harsh trials and fated, saturated questions we could not answer. And I am sure you already know this. You can reverse time, but you cannot reverse a tale. And we can finally expand Architecture Team, the last team. The cap for stats has been changed to 130 thanks to completing Hokma's meltdown. I'm not really going to try to reach a stat for everyone. It's just a thing now. That's really why I was saving this one for last. I just don't really think it's that useful. I don't really think Venus is that useful either, just because I'm trying to let people die, but I mean, Alright, so welcome back to Lobotomy Corp. You're at day 46, finally. The end game. Start of it, that is. Shuffled around all the employees so that every department is 3 minus extraction. And we moved Goom down into architecture. So Yumeka's wearing the other Justicia Ego armor, although Choi still has the weapon. And that'll be temporary, so because we're about to get some more Pale Resist armor from one of the new abnormalities in architecture, not extraction. All of the last 5 days are suppressions, basically. There's a reason why there's a suppression filter, and why it says proving oneself, suppress the minute of white place meet energy quota, which is what we have to do to finish the meltdown. So let's get into that now. Night of Despair is a wall level abnormality. It does white damage. It prefers attachment and insight work in that order. And it can also be used as an okay repression trainer. Not very good, but okay. Also I said trainer, whatever. It has no Quilthoth counter. Instead, the first person who gets a good result will receive a blessing. This blessing has red, white, and black damage, but increases pale damage by 1.5 times. This is multiplicative, so a person who already is taking 0.2 without that buff will instead taking 0.1 red damage, for example. This is very, very good. However, if the blessed employee dies, she will breach. When she is breaching, she will teleport to different rooms and fire her swords at them, which deal 50 pale damage. And because pale damage is dealt as a percentage of your maximum HP, that means that usually your employees will take more than half their health from a single shot. In fact, if they're wearing armor that has 2 times pale resistance, then they will die from a single shot. Because she's continuously teleports around the facility, she's very, very annoying to suppress. And very, very difficult to suppress without losing someone. But it's also very rare to see her breach at all, because usually you'll just give your best employee the blessing at the beginning of the day. Her equipment is pretty good, but not great. The sword does a fair bit of white damage attacks quickly, but not too much. Additionally, it's a secondary attack where it will do a lot of smaller stabs of lower damage, but way faster than its normal attack. Her suit is the best piece of equipment. It has 0.8 resistance towards everything, but in this case, unlike previous cases, everything includes pale. This is a good equipment to use if you before getting something like Judgment Bird that does pale damage. It's actually enough pale resist to work on any of the pale damage abnormalities in the game, as long as you have a good employee. Knight of Despair is overall a very good abnormality and a solid pick for any facility because of her unique blessing ability, as well as good equipment. The Little Prince is a Wa abnormality that does black damage. It prefers attachment at work overall, but it has decent work rates on everything. Its lowest work rates are in Insight, though. It has a Quillcloth counter of 2, which lowers after 3 consecutive non-Insight works are performed. For example, Instinct, Attachment, Repression, that would low. If you did all 3 of those in a row, its counter would lower by 1. A single bad result also lowers its counter by 1. Additionally, employees must, if an employee works on the abnormality 5 times, a counter is incremented. Once this counter reaches 5, the employee will be transformed into a monster and die. To lower the counter, the employee must work with a different abnormality. Therefore, the efficient way to work with this is just to have 2 people alternating Insight works between this and then working on some other abnormality. It can be used to train everything, but it's very easy to lose track of the works if you're trying to train different employees on it, because you have to keep alternating who's working on it, and forget to do Insight and then cause its Quillcloth counter at 0. When its Quillcloth counter hits 0, it will possess multiple employees, lowering them to its containment chamber. They can be snapped out of it by clicking on them repeatedly, as with many possession type effects. Once an employee reaches its chamber from its possession, it will mutate them into a spore creature, and then it will wander the hallway that the containment unit is in. Spores will spread, which is a visual, and it will attack employees that it sees, with doing black damage. Once it is killed, it will die and release spores. These spores will do a small amount of white damage for a few seconds, and if an employee hits 0 sanity due to this effect, then they will be lowered to its containment and turn into a monster. While its rules are pretty complicated, its weapon is by far worth the cost, as it is another damage increase type weapon, this time for white. This is a very good weapon for the Apocalypse Bird fight, as none of the Apocalypse Bird pieces resist white. It is the only element that is not absorbed by at least one of the eggs. Additionally, it also attacks the quickest out of all the damage increasing weapons. Its suit is alright, however it is weak to black, which is kind of a major downside at this point in the game. Although we have seen the beat-up fight, so it's not as bad as it once was. Little Prince is an abnormality that is mostly valuable due to its weapon. While it can't train any stat, you normally don't use it for training at all just due to how annoying it is to work with. Overall, it's just an abnormality that you get its weapon, and then you only work with it during meltdowns. And as long as you're careful to make sure you're only working Insight, and you alternate works, it shouldn't be that big of an issue to actually handle. So as you saw with the day, the major new threat of the endgame scenarios is the white ordeals. These have replaced all the previous colors of ordeals. White Dawn is the first. For White Dawn, it will select either Red Fixer, White Fixer, or Black Fixer. These are 3 separate enemies and spawn one of them. The 2 that are not selected will be the White Noon of the day. In this case, selected the Black Fixer. The Black Fixer does a lot of black damage, as you could probably guess, with his hammer. Additionally, if you leave him alone for too long, he will release all the abnormalities in the hallway he's in. In this case, if we left him alone, he would release Little Riding Hood Mercenary and Judgment Bird, which should be incredibly annoying because they're both pretty hard to suppress. Even alone. He can't outdamage the black shields though, so as long as you're careful, it should be a threat. Alone, at least. When he dies, all the abnormalities in the department with him melt down. Which, in this case, is everything except for Blackbird's Clock. The tool would melt down normally, but Blackbird's Clock cannot melt down, just so you would not be forced to sacrifice an employee, as it can potentially kill. And if you had no level 5 employees, it would also mean you would kill every single employee in the game except for one, so that is why it cannot melt down, thankfully. The White Noon's the next ordeal coming up. spawn in the level right after the dawn, which is not guaranteed. Noon's either 3, 4, or 5 at the end of those, but it doesn't really matter when because we have to make it to midnight anyway. The next few days it will matter when the noon spawns, unfortunately, and I have great luck, so I expect the noon to spawn at the most inconvenient time every single attempt. But who knows? When the noon spawn starts, the red fixer and the white fixer will both spawn, because the black fixer was the dawn. It's important to do proper positioning for the ordeals, so I've moved people to separate elevators just to make sure they're grouped together. I've grouped the departments basically into upper floor, lower floor, and Marie. Marie's role right now is to solo the red fixer. The other 2 floors are going to fight the white fixer. The other 2 groups, more accurately. The red fixer has a lot of red damage, and has a massive range death attack. He fires a giant laser that sweeps through multiple floors when he dies. It does 70 red damage coming from a wall abnormality. If we were wearing red weak suits, that would probably one-hit kill us. I don't think anyone is right now. People were wearing a Nameless Fetus's suit, but I traded that out for a different outfit before this day started, just in case they would get caught in the red fixer. And since everyone has around 100 health, they should be fine, but it's still important just to try to be really careful. The white fixer is probably a bigger threat overall, especially because I just deal with the red fixer by sending someone really tanky at it, like in this case, Marie. It can't do much to someone who can tank its damage. It doesn't have any other tricks. The white fixer is the one that you really have to watch out for. Marie's fighting the red fixer in the elevator, and we've just engaged the white fixer right below it. Marie's killing the red fixer faster than literally everyone else is killing the white fixer though, so as to not make them use a lot of the laser, I do cancel Marie's fight eventually. That chime noise is the white fixer's major trick. While that noise is ongoing, the white fixer is in a stance where they will reflect all damage incoming. If you do not disengage from the fight when this noise starts, you will very likely lose most of your fighting force. It's incredibly annoying. The white fixer also has by far the largest attack range of all the fixers, as their attacks shoot a giant cloud of mist that covers like entire departments at a time. It's ridiculous. This attack is the primary reason why I've been wiping out the clerks, just because I don't want to see it happen. Again, look at how much area that mist covers. And I do have people wearing white weak suits. But with the white fixer down, we can re-engage the red fixer and finish this up. Putting them in the safety room is not a great idea because the red fixer can snipe a giant horizontal laser as well. That's the same laser it uses for its death attack. The white fixer also has a death attack. It's not really as much of a threat because it has way less range than their normal attacks. It does around the same damage. And with that, noon is gone. Upcoming next is Dusk. Dusk spawns in all 4 fixers at once. There's a pale fixer is exclusive to the Dusk event. Most likely because pale damage is the most threatening of all the damage types. Just because everything is weak to it. Pretty much. And I believe Marie is taking around 0.75 times damage from that right now due to the Blessing. The Blessing's normally pretty nice, but in this case, it is not great, because if I was to have her fight the Pale, she would be taking more damage than she should be. But we don't have to have her fight the Pale, we have other tools at our disposal. And other, such ways to deal with annoying fights. And such forth. Main reason I've been cutting the actual gameplay footage just because a lot of it is just farming the 2 new abnormalities for all their gear, because we're still doing that in the background. I do really think it's important to maximize the chances of us having good equipment, and both of those abnormalities have good equipment. And even if they didn't, I would still be farming it for anyway, just because I don't know, I just like having all the equipment I can have. No reason not to. We can't lose it after all, thanks to Bina's upgrade. it doesn't really matter too much what you work with, because like Hokma suppression, this day tends to go fairly long just because you're like going all the way to midnight no matter what. So you'll meet the energy requirement most likely, no matter what you do. So the dusk is by far the largest threat of the white ordeals in my opinion. White midnight is pretty easy for reasons, as long as you know how it works. And we'll see when we get to it. But what you have to do is figure out the biggest threat and just engage them properly. Notably, I don't really do this. I kind of just engage in several smaller fights at once. We have Marie on the red fixer going in, the lower floors in the black fixer, and the upper floors on the white fixer. And the rabbits are dealing with the pale fixer. The pale fixer does a lot of pale damage, and their death attack also does a lot of pale damage. They basically just do a lot of pale damage. It's their entire thing. And if they're ignored for too long, they will teleport to your employees and attack them. Normal, if you weren't using the rabbits, the pale fixer would be one of the ones you want to engage first, just as someone who had like any pale resist at all. But since we are just using the rabbits and the pale fixer, we don't have to worry about it at all. They can definitely take care of the pale fixer way quicker than our agents will be able to, or at least be able to safely. The rabbits take like half damage from everything, so they'll be fine too. It doesn't have enough damage to wipe out them. Oh, it does do a fair bit of damage. Right now, upper floor is engaged, the other two haven't yet. Weight Fixer is a bit of an attention sponge, just to do his counterattack stance. You have to be able to be focusing it so that you can hear the sound effects, or at least I do. If you space out during the fight and don't hear its counterattack stance, it can very easily signal the death of like 20 employees at once if you're fighting with a big group like I am. I don't really recommend that. In case you're wondering what the fixers actually are, they're mental constructs like the rest of the ordeals, but they represent fixers, which are basically mercenaries in the setting of the game. Ruina explains more about what fixers actually are, because you end up fighting a lot of fixers in that game, real fixers. But in this case, they're more of, well, we pay attention to the messages that pop up when they explain their fight. They're kind of like visions of the future, essentially. Or at least I think that's what I was trying to imply. I don't know. I'm not really too deep into the lore sponge here. Delilah's uncontrollable because she's about to die. This is what happens when you're not focusing. Basically, the black fixer got off its lower the cooldown counter to 0 of an attack, and lowered the little prince's counter to 0. This caused Delilah to enter its containment unit because they were fighting right outside of it immediately, and she's about to turn into a fungus monster. This is deemed an acceptable death, much like Kim Dae-ri's death way earlier in the Let's Play, just because this day is kind of annoying to do. Most people went insane, but we can beat them back to sanity fairly easily. Just because we have a lot of white damage for this point. The white fixer is still alive, just because I've been focusing on making sure that Little Effer is alright. And everyone else. Luckily, most of the agents in our facility have Prudence as their highest stat, or at least all the ones that went insane did, because if Temperance was their highest, the multiple insanities at once would be a lot harder to deal with. Delilah is a big mushroom monster right now, so I'll just beat her up. It's only an HE level threat despite coming from a wall. And we have to make sure that we're working Little Prince and Knight of Despair just so that they don't well, Little Knight of Despair wouldn't breach, but Little Prince would. Just to make sure nothing bad happens with Little Prince. That's the main reason why I'm working both of them. Although, again, no reason not to work Knight of Despair. It's just free boxes and energy and experience. And the White Fixer is still alive. It is, it sure is what it is. It's supposed to enter its counterattack stance around 2 to 3 times when you're fighting it. It enters it at certain HP thresholds, I believe. I could be incorrect about this. In confusing it with something else, but who knows. It has entered it yet again, right before it would die. Thank you, White Fixer, my beloved. Totally not incredibly annoying to fight. I've lost multiple attempts at endgame days to White Fixer, not in this run, but in other runs. And by other runs, I mean the one other run of the game I've done. I did fail to stay once, that was due to Black Fixer doing something very similar to what I attempted to do during the Dawn, except successfully. It released Little Red Riding Hood, Mercenary, and Judgment Purge proceeded to run into my weakened from the Black Fixer fighting force and then murder a lot of them. I'm fine with losing one agent in the endgame stuff because it's hard, but multiple is not really something I can't abide ever. Delilah is dead, even though Fungus Monster is gone. It's not really super wise to do 4 fights at once. I probably should have just grouped up everyone and fought the Black Fixer alone, but that probably wouldn't have happened then. But whatever, mistakes were made. This should be the last time we'll see the Dusk and the Midnight anyway, so they kinda got the show off, I guess. I only have one person who can work anything in disciplinary right now, which could be a problem, but it's not. Spoilers. There's just not enough meltdowns for it to be likely for all disciplinary stuff to be hit, and the Black Fixers are gone, so they can't make all of them meltdown. Anyway, we're moving into the final White Ordeal, the White Midnight. This has probably the highest damage potential of all the ordeals in the game, but if you know what you're doing, it's not going to be a problem. As is normal for big fights, we're grouping up all of our agents into one big cluster. Minus Murray, because she has to engage on her own, due to being the best agent in terms of damage. Conveniently, the claw spawns are really close to the cluster, although I kind of have to wait for Murray to get in before we engage. And again, this means that the cluster will have to move closer to where we finally engage. This is because the claw, which is what the White Midnight is, if you recall, this is Vino was sent in with 2 claws. These are mental constructs of a claw, not real claws. Some people think that the head was sending real claws during this part. The head does not know what's going on right now. So no, these are not real claws. The claw will prepare either an orange, a green, or a blue attack after a few seconds. The orange attack is that dash you just saw. The green attack is a heal, which you can interrupt by doing enough damage in a certain amount of time. If you interrupt any attack, the claw is stunned for several seconds, during which you can wail on it with impunity. Our DPS isn't optimal right now, so it's really important we back off around half health. If we let it get to a third of its health, it will use its ultimate attack, which should decimate our employees. It does a ton of tail damage, and it does it to a large group of employees like 8 times in a row. It's very hard to survive even if you have good fail resist, especially if you're grouped up like we are. Anyway, this is its last attack. It's a blue attack. A lot of our employees are marked as circles. You could get rid of this by working with an abnormality, but you could also just beat it in before it finishes charging and stun it again. And we did half its health in the first stun, so the second stun will finish it off. This is typically how White Midnight fights should go, as long as you're careful. White Midnight just does not have the survivability to be a threat. And that's that. The claw is down. That's the first and last time we'll see White Midnight. We've had 1 death, but it's a tough day. I'm not going to rewind for it. We'll just continue with our next 2 abnormalities. TO450, this is a wall we've seen before. Well, not seen before. FO249, this is an HE, and O164, this is another magical girl who's another wall. And we are rolling a 2, so we'll take 49. TO154, this is an HE, a Teth, not an HE. O260, this is an Aleph, and TO450 is, we just saw it, it's a wall. And we rolled it, too. And now it is time for Surgeon Lore. Oh, mysterious worn-out machine used for operations. This machine was designed to pull back the skull and destroy nerve tissue simply and efficiently. Many of those who underwent an operation in the machine have found themselves rested and healthy again. Those who answered yes to the question, "Do you love your city?" were deemed cured. Those who answered no weren't allowed to discharge. The longer the machine is in use, the better a person becomes. Furthermore, the longer it is used, the faster the question will change. What a beautiful story.